What's up, Mania fans? This is RB3. We will be doing Throwback Tuesday episodes, TBT. For our YouTube channel, First Cut, we'll be uploading our old episodes that were previously on a different network, and we are going to be uploading them here with new graphics, updated graphics, and it's going to be the old episodes, but with new graphics. And since the Joker's coming out, we're going to be talking about Todd Phillips on our main episode, but then our throwback episode is going to be the Dark Knight, and we have a lot of great lineup stuff coming for you exclusively for First Cut, but also the Media podcast feed is going to be getting good stuff too. So without further ado, this is a long intro. I know I talked too much. I'm probably going to edit like half of it out. Please enjoy.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Meaning of Podcast. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we get into your favorite directors' movies and their deeper meaning of those movies. And today is an exciting episode, guys, because we're starting off with our Christopher Nolan weeks, 2 weeks, however many weeks, 4 weeks. We're going to do Christopher Nolan as long as it takes, man, because that's how much we appreciate that director. But
and
first,
Nolan we trust.
And Nolan we trust, man. That's right. Hashtag Nolan forever. We are starting with the Dark Knight Trilogy on this episode, so that's going to be really fun. But in the following week, we're going to get into the other Nolan films. Every Nolan film is like a philosophical franchise within itself.
Yeah, textbook of college literature of each one.
Yeah, man, on a technical aspect, on a filmmaking aspect, on a pretty much every aspect. This guy takes his art seriously. But this week we're talking all about the Batman movies because we love Batman and because we love Batman movies, and it's going to be an exciting episode. However, before we start that, we're going to talk about last week's episode, which was Ava DuVernay, however people pronounce it nowadays. I've seen like 4 different pronunciations in the past 2 weeks.
You have to figure out how she pronounces it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That episode was fire. Everybody listened to that episode, right, RB3?
It was a great episode, though.
Hey, I thought it was great too, man. But
we damned ourselves putting the A Wrinkle in Time spoiler review in
that's probably one of the reasons why.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, our first comment, and speaking of comments, guys, make sure you guys leave us comments every week. Whether you want to comment something small, something big, something about the specific episode, something about future episodes, let us know in the comment section. That's the best way for you to connect with us. And you can obviously let us know on Twitter as well. I'm at Squad Leader Ace.
At RB3 Schmoes.
And you can let us know what you think of the episode and what you thought or what you want to see in the future. Starting with Gunslinger199, who usually comments, and he says, you have great personalities, guys, but don't change the podcast just yet. There are many directors to analyze. Unfortunately, A Wrinkle in Time is not yet released in my country, so I will miss the review. I think that's what we were just talking about, how like we kind of shot ourselves in the foot putting A Wrinkle in Time review and spoilers in the title because some people might have skipped the episode because of that. So
yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
It is what it is. So screw you, Gunslinger one. I'm kidding.
But good review of Wrinkle in Time, man. I think we're fair.
Yeah, I think we were fair, man. That movie got unusually strong criticism. We talked about it a little bit over the weekend, but that movie was like destroyed, and we kind of agreed that it's an okay movie. It's not. Yeah. I think I disliked it a little more than you did, but I just thought it was like not good, and a kids movie, super cheesy, super like kidsy, but it's not the worst abomination in the movie theater of 2018 so far. I just don't agree with that.
Yeah, nah, it's all right, man. Just chill, people.
Chill. Tari says you guys should get T as a guest star on this podcast. T, man.
Hey,
T's
man.
cool. I like
She's
T.
She's the best, man.
She's on Movie Talk a lot now, so.
Hey, man, I've been a big fan of Cinefix. You know this for years and years. She's not there anymore, but
unfortunately she's not. But she looks like she's like chilling at Collider a lot more, which is cool. So
yeah, we should get invited there more too.
Hey, man, why not RB3 and Ace on Collider Movie Talk? I mean, has anyone suggested that before?
Hey,
what?
Man, tweet at your favorite creators. Tell them, Screen Junkies, movie fights, Throwdown. We want it all. All of it.
We want the belts, the championship. What is it? Schmodown belts.
Yeah, all the belts, all the records, right?
Yeah, that's what we want, man.
Video I edited, by the way, coined that phase. People don't realize that.
Dondre Stark says, I'm glad y'all did Ava. I think she's a great director. I love Selma, Middle of Nowhere, 13th. And Queen Sugar is one of my favorite shows on TV right now.
Yes, Queen Sugar.
We didn't talk about Queen Sugar.
Yeah.
I know, or at least I think you mentioned it.
Yeah, I mentioned it. Yeah. The fact that it's an all-women's directing team. But fantastic show, man. If y'all not checking that out, it's very melodramatic, kind of soap opera-ish. But it's really good. It's really good TV. Some really good characters in there. Nice setups and everything. So, Queen Sugar.
Before we get into this week's episode, which is on Nolan, let's finish up on Ava real quick. I want to hear your hot thoughts. Hashtag hot thoughts. Hot thoughts. On Ava directing the New Gods movie for Warner Brothers DC universe. I don't think I've asked you about this, and I think I asked you, but you don't give me a response. You just give me a look. So I'm kind of excited to hear your thoughts on this. But what are your initial reaction to this? Because it's super layered. Because there's it's Warner Brothers. It's a superhero comic book. It's following A Wrinkle in Time. It's Ava. It's a big budget. Like there's so many different layers to this news that it's kind of crazy to like break it all down. But what do you think?
I don't know, man. I mean, this is interesting news. I don't know really what to make of it. I'm not familiar with the New Gods comic book or whatever. I don't know anything about that. What I do know is Ava DuVernay does have an affinity for science fiction. If you watch her music video for Family Feud by Jay-Z and Beyonce, it has a very sci-fi futuristic kind of interpretation look on things. Pretty Afro-futurist in a sense. But yeah, it's interesting to see.
So are you excited about it? Do you feel like it's good? Is it a good decision? It's a bad decision on her career? Like, is she following A Wrinkle in Time? Is this the right place to go?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what does she have like a lot of control on A Wrinkle in Time? Did Disney like butcher the movie? I mean, I don't know. Was Warner Bros. Going to be any different? I mean, WB has been known for doing some things in the editing room, but
Justice League.
It might work out in the sense that maybe if a studio winds in the creative control a little bit, it'll be a little more accessible to people. Maybe, I'm not sure. I have faith in whatever Ava DuVernay is doing next. I hope nothing but the best for her, of course, and I do want to see more African Americans directing superhero movies. I know that the news came out last week. Now a lot of people were talking about Spike Lee directing that Nightcrawler, Spider-Man film. Which to me that's even more exciting news to me, because Spike Lee's obviously a veteran in this industry.
Do you trust Sony though?
I believe, I don't know what direction Sony heading in, but I like it, because you gotta think their Silver, what was it, the Black Cat and Silver Sable movie is directed by Gina Prince Bythewood, black woman. Their Nightcrawler movie is going to be directed by Spike Lee, a black man, and who has a long history. Both of these directors have long historied careers in Hollywood, so it's interesting seeing that happen. And same with Ava DuVernay, man. So
then they're doing Miles Morales too.
But I don't know. That's animated, yeah. But I mean, listen, nobody's bringing up this whole thing with the Night. What's his name? Night. The one that Spike Lee. This is the Nightcrawler. It's not Nightcrawler.
It's not Nightcrawler.
Yeah, it's something.
I forget.
Yeah, whatever. But it's nice. I think it's interesting that it's written by the same guy who who's the showrunner behind Luke Cage, and it's directed by Spike Lee. Obviously, Luke Cage is a big Harlem show. Spike Lee being a big New Yorker. I'm interested in feeling like this, seeing this like big budget, distinctly New York, like black New York kind of perspective, because we see New York in a lot of superhero movies, obviously the Avengers, and I think the Spider-Man franchise, the original Sam Raimi versions are the only superhero movies that use the identity of New York as a character. And with Spike Lee as a director, all of his movies are about New York, and with this writer, I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious to see it for sure. I know a lot of people have been commenting on A Wrinkle in Time and how they don't trust Ava anymore to do something. They're like, oh, I don't trust Ava with a big budget after proving it with A Wrinkle in Time. I think a lot of that is source material though, and especially when it comes to
tough adapting.
It is. It's a tough source material. 1, 2. It's a kids movie, and I feel like when it comes to like, if you want to erase, I don't think it's necessarily the big budget that damned the movie in terms of critical reception. I think what damned the movie was the fact that it was just way too kiddie. So give her the right source material that's more mature, and that maybe she can,
Well, I mean,
do something deeper, do something more that's in her wheelhouse that's not necessarily directed towards children, like New Gods.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what New Gods. I mean, that
Well,
sounds.
no,
The title just sounds like it's hard to adapt.
It kind of will be. New Gods is much more. So basically, New Gods is about New Genesis and Apocalypse, two planets that have beings that are just basically like the new gods. It comes from the Superman comic book, and it comes from Jack Kirby. Essentially, Apocalypse is the planet of Darkseid. Now, you know Darkseid, right?
Yeah.
And Darkseid has this alliance with Allfather, and they have like this peace treaty to basically swap sons, and one of those sons is Orion. So the son of Darkseid is Orion, but he's raised in this like utopian, super Star Trek futuristic kind of planet that's like peaceful and loving and supposed to be like on a much different scale. But these two planets are polar opposites and at war. But the whole concept of the two planets is how Apocalypse is this disgusting, crazy, infested planet ruled by this all-powerful creature named Darkseid, versus Allfather, who rules New Genesis. And it seems to be utopian, but it might not be as utopian as you think. It's basically, it's super, space. It's super like fantastical. It's much more like a Lord of the Rings type thing than it is like a comic book thing. It's much more fantasy than it is like sci-fi, even though it's sci-fi. But it's kind of insane. And the only reason I know about it is because of Superman. Because I follow Superman closely, and Superman like battles Darkseid like a million times. That's like his main villain besides Lex. And he meets up with Orion and these people from this other planet. So my favorite part of New Gods is when Superman beats the crap out of them, but that's just me. So it's a very, very strange kind of comic book.
You kind of lost me like a quarter of the way in. So.
Well, basically, it's like it's two royal warring families going at it. That's essentially what it is. Game of Thrones in space. Where it's like super like two royal, like all powerful families, one good, one evil. The Lannisters and the Starks. Yeah,
we get like space battles, or
not necessarily, kind of space battles, but it's like weird creatures on Apocalypse and.
Oh, they're not even humans.
Huh?
Are they humans?
No, they're not. They're not. They're definitely not.
But I mean, are they like? I mean, do they look like humans?
On New Genesis, yeah. I mean, but look at Darkseid. Darkseid, he's like a stone creature. And then, they have like weird looking people. But then you have Big Barda, you have, Granny Goodness, you have all these like. Darkseid is obsessed with like powerful women. That's like his thing. That's like his.
That's the angle they're going for.
I get it. He's obsessed
yeah.
with like surrounding himself with powerful women. Like he wants. Like when it comes to his army, he wants women commanding his army. He's like, I want the most badass women to command my army. So he goes after like Big Barda is one of them, and then sometimes he goes after Supergirl in one of the comic books, and then he's obsessed with. He thinks Wonder Woman's awesome because he's a badass woman. Like he's obsessed with like powerful women, and that's what he wants to like. And Granny Goodness is another one who like trains them. But that's kind of Darkseid's angle as far as like he thinks like though the women who kick ass are like the coolest thing ever. And he's like obsessed with like training them and shit, and he's surrounding himself with it. So it's a weird thing, but I like it because of Superman. I just like it when Superman is in there and he just, like I said, beats everyone up. But I have no idea what they're gonna do with this. I have no clue. I'm assuming Darkseid's gonna be in it, but that's pretty much all I know.
Yeah. So I don't get any of it. But I'm hoping for a good. Listen, I think just because you missed on one big budget thing doesn't mean you shouldn't do more big budget things. You know what I mean?
I 100% agree, especially when the source material is different. This isn't a Disney Channel kids movie. Well, I mean, not Disney Channel, but kind of like a Disney movie. If they make this very much darker and very much like a, Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, a more fantasy type thing, then I think it'll be cool. I think it'll be cool to see like, crazy warriors and warring families go at it.
Well, we'll say though, what Ava DuVernay is really good at, just based on being a fan of Queen Sugar, she's good at creating conflict like internally with people. Just like with Queen Sugar, it's a lot of like family drama, like warring ideologies between like family members. and stuff
That's
like that.
kind of what this is.
And I think that if that's what's being approached here, I think that's really it could be something really interesting and special. But hey, man, I'm just happy to see more Black people directing superhero movies.
Dude,
maybe we could redeem the good name of Tim Story one of these days.
That's gonna be tough.
See if Tim Story get a second chance.
I mean, I struggle with Warner Brothers because my thoughts on Warner Brothers. I've been very vocal about it as far as what they're doing. But
where's that Cyborg movie, man? What the fuck happened to Cyborg?
Cyborg 2020, man. Hashtag Cyborg 2020. I don't know where that's going. It's definitely not happening.
Hey, man, get Coogler to direct Cyborg.
But I do feel like so many studios don't put their money where their mouth is when it comes to like hiring diverse talent and giving diverse talent enough power. Lucasfilm is one of them. So that's like one of those things where it's like at least Warner Brothers is like, hey, we talked about bringing in diversity and we're actually going to bring in diversity.
Yeah,
instead of talking about it, instead of being like, well, yeah, maybe down the line, like in 2028, we'll bring in like a Black director. But these people are like, no, we'll do it now and we'll make it a big budget. Even if A Wrinkle in Time kind of didn't do well at the box office.
Credit to Sony for doing that too. Credit for Disney for putting Black Panther and A Wrinkle in Time on. Credit for Sony for obviously developing some of these projects. Hopefully they come through. Warner Brothers doing a good job. Warner Brothers, my internship letter is still in the mail. I'm waiting for a response. Warner Brothers, please contact me. My email address is provided as needed. Please contact me for that internship that I've been looking for. Thank you.
All right, let's move on. Warner Brothers, you know how I feel about you. I love you and I hate you. Release the Snyder Cut. Hashtag release the Snyder Cut. Let's move on to, speaking of Warner Brothers, Warner Brothers.
Well, they're probably one of their greatest trilogies.
Well, back when they were dope. They worked up with Christopher Nolan and decided to take a new take in the Batman movies. So basically, they decided to have this director, Christopher Nolan, this British guy, come in and give his version of this new take on Batman. And I remember this because it came out in 2005 with Batman Begins. And we're going to get into it, guys, because we want to dive into like definitely a lot of the philosophical stuff. But obviously, the introduction comes in with giving we're coming to a different angle with the Batman movies. We're not taking on the Batman movies in a very kiddie, campy, super cartoony, super ridiculous, super over the top, that they were in the 90s. And now we're like, let's do this again and let's take it from the source material. Because so many times with those Batman movies, people were confusing comic books with children, and people were confusing comic books with silly and ridiculous and cartoony and kiddie and 5-year-olds. Read the Batman comics. They are very much not that, Well,
to be fair, they were originally created for kids.
True, but what they became was something much more darker, serious, philosophical, deeper than almost any other comic book run before it. And that's essentially what Batman is. They decided to do the Batman from like the Adam West days, when in reality what the comics were doing during the 90s was making Batman super, super dark and super serious and super, powerful with deeper themes in all the comic books. So Nolan, who was actually a fan of those comic books, decided to say, hey, let me take Batman Year One, the comic, let me take The Long Halloween, the comic, and let me make that into a movie. If I don't know if you've read those comics specifically, but they're very deep, very dark comics about crime, about corruption, about symbolism, about fear, about insanity. Like, these are, very deeper, more powerful themes that you can tackle in a movie. And Nolan wanted to do his own take and his trilogy surrounding it. And he started that out with Batman Begins. And Batman Begins is, I think that movie is awesome. I talked about it on the top 50 superhero movies. I had a good take on it as far as like the amount of talking time they gave me. I was like, oh, I'm surprised they actually gave me some time to talk about it. But I ranted about how incredible this movie is on so many levels. It hits the action. It hits the cool factor. It hits the themes. It's faithful enough to the source material. It's very much a departure as far as the Ra's al Ghul character. But other than that, it's such an interesting take on Batman. It makes it Batman in the real world, Batman in real life. How would Batman look like? And that's, to me, is like the biggest thing about this movie, is the fact that, you know, if Batman really was real, what would be his purpose in all of this, you know, ridiculous crime that's happening in this fictional city? But if it was a real city, what would Batman do, kind of thing?
Right. I think definitely where the Batman begins takes its approaches, and it differs a little bit from the later films. I think the Dark Knight and the Dark Knight Rises are more about how the individual influences society. This is a movie about how the society influences the individual. Whereas Bruce Wayne's social status, his money, his inheritance, his power, still leaves him with the same kind of vulnerabilities as a normal kid who loses their parents and who is orphaned at a very young age. Still leaving that bitter, like internal, fight amongst himself, and externalizing that in the Batman symbol. And I like the idea of having a character who instead of using their anger and fear to internally, they externalize that and creates a symbol that strikes that fear into other criminals, which is really interesting. And I think that the way they approach that is really fascinating and cool.
You know, I've talked a lot about extremism in this podcast, about how like it can be insane and it can be unnecessary at times, but that's essentially what Batman is, right? Batman reacts to extreme circumstances with another extreme version of it, with an extreme attack on it, I guess you can say, right? Because dressing up as a bat and becoming a ninja is pretty extreme, as far as, you know, extremes go. But he reacts to like a city that is so crime ridden and that is so taken over by the mob, and that there's so much crime, so many deaths, so many murders, and how he reacts to his parents dying as a result of that crime, and as a result of that city that is infested with crime, with battling it outside the law, outside the perceived notion of democracy, and saying nah, I'm just gonna, you know, take your extreme and meet it on the other extreme, and become the opposite version of what a crime city would be, and just be a guy who cleans up the city using his bare hands, essentially, as the Batman.
Yeah, I think this movie deals with an interesting approach of rebirth too, in the sense of rebirth, and as him, as an individual, as he goes through the training, through the League of Shadows, kind of being reincarnated as a new person, in the sense that he, like I said, he takes the internal fear and externalizes that. And instead of using violence and killing people to leave a morality stance, he instead uses the symbol of Batman as a method of peace. And you know, and this is a time-old philosophy. We see this explored in other films and other pieces of work, and even the most recent The Last Jedi kind of deals with the idea of the symbol being greater than the actions. And I think this movie definitely begins that path. And I think the whole it's also kind of like a meta-analysis on like the ideas of Batman as we understand them today, because we see Wayne Manor getting burned down. We see a totally, you know, with most of the Batman, you know, iconography, we get the over-the-top goofy cars. Here he's literally driving a tank. So it's kind of recontextualizing all of the old Batman tropes. No more Wayne Manor, no more, you know, flashy Tumblr, no more bat nipples. It's a really the Batman suit isn't really even like a suit for demonstrating a bat. It's technical armor. Essentially, so
it's a symbol of like militarism, if you think about it. He's driving a tank, wearing armor, and just beating the crap out of people.
Well, this is a post 9/11 movie. This is probably the first superhero movie. I mean, of course, the original Spider-Man addresses 9/11 to some extent, but this is kind of the first movie that embraces the post 9/11 world and the idea and the fear and the threat of terrorism coming directly into a city. And this movie being shot, I believe it was mostly shot in Pittsburgh. If I'm not mistaken.
It's shot in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So they
all three of them were.
Yeah, well, then there's I think some of the Dark Knight Rises shot in L.A. too, right?
Oh yeah, and I think a little bit in Chicago too.
Yeah, well, I know the Dark Knight Rises is weird. They shot like literally in every city too. New York.
I know they shot in Pittsburgh because I have friends in Pittsburgh who worked on the movie.
Oh really? Yeah. I know for the L.A. one, I even remember like when they're for Dark Knight Rises. We'll talk about that later, but like when they have like the big bat wing, like I remember literally seeing them hanging it like through the streets of downtown L.A. Like seeing that as a kid. That was pretty dope. But yeah, other than that, no. But again, this what Batman Begins is not only the story of the Batman of Bruce Wayne, it's the story of Gotham as well, and how Gotham got to a place that required this like satanic figure that's like Batman to come in and fix the city. And they definitely and listen. I probably have a little more contrarian take on the themes and what they're trying to say in these Batman movies. Honestly, I think they're great films, but I do think there is some, conservative propaganda being put in these movies. And I want to talk to you about that, Ace. You
want to talk about right now?
We could talk about the Dark Knight. We could talk about Batman Begins in terms of, you mentioned before, the militarization, right? How Wayne Manor or how Wayne Enterprise don't they get their money from war profiteering too, right? So weapons manufacture. What was Wayne Enterprises in this movie?
Not in Batman Begins. No.
Well, what are they representing here?
As far as Wayne Enterprises?
Yeah.
In the first movie?
Yeah.
They're like in infrastructure and shit, aren't they?
Well, I mean, they built the train.
They built the train. They do like the city stuff. They made a very good point of talking about how Thomas Wayne was like not the Thomas Wayne from the comic books. Thomas Wayne was like a guy who has a lot of investment and used his investments in infrastructure and saving the city is what Bruce would say. Remember in the movie, he'd be like, "My dad tried to save the city," because he tried to, uses all his money as far as like trying to create jobs with, I think mainly infrastructure is what Wayne Enterprises was in Batman Begins, as far as like trying to create jobs and stop crime by building stuff and building roads and building trains and building all that stuff. I think that's what they insinuated in Batman Begins.
Well, I think doesn't the train ultimately end up like blowing up at the end too? So I think definitely what they're going for, and I think it's very subtle here, but I think it becomes more prominent in like the Dark Knight and the Dark Knight Rises. But I definitely think what's being said here is that making your money. I mean, the Applied Sciences division of Wayne Manor is where
it's shut down in the beginning of Batman Begins, though.
Right. But they're fucking making tanks. Like
they didn't though. That's the whole point of the movie. Like Lucius Fox says, he's like, I was gonna make tanks, but they never greenlight anything. They were like, yeah, make it. Oh, never mind. And then they cut his funding and basically shut it down. And he said he just makes like, I don't know what he makes now, but he doesn't make anything military anymore. Not for Batman Begins. I agree with you. They take it more in The Dark Knight, and you'll see more of that. But in Batman Begins, no. Definitely not.
I definitely think this is probably the one that was a little more, like I think that this one's a little more of a traditional Batman film than I think the other two are.
I agree.
I think this one has a little more of the vigilante stamp to it.
Yeah.
Where that amazing sequence where the Batmobile is like running through Gotham City and
so good.
Jumping over parking lots and shit. Like that's pretty, or buildings. That's probably one of the favorite sequences. But I definitely think this movie is going for all three of these movies kind of go for the lower division class kind of having frustrations with the elites, the Bruce Waynes of the world, and how the conditions of the poor, disgruntled, people at the hands of the establishment leads to like a turn in the establishment, which is why Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne are killed in the beginning, because it's a dude trying to get some money.
Yeah.
So it's I think they're definitely approaching that. And you know, I think they're definitely like hinting on that in this film a lot, and I think that's what.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as hinted in Batman Begins as it is maybe in The Dark Knight or other movies. But for me, this thing is like it's Bruce Wayne, and he realizes that the hold that crime has on Gotham is never gonna be solved with the corruption within the institutions of the police department, of the lawyers, of the judges. Because remember, they really make a point to talk about the corrupt judge who keeps just like letting criminals go and letting the mob take over everything. Because the mob hasn't bought, the mob has the police department bought. Like pretty much everything is bought. So he realizes that when he sits down with Hermione Falcone, he realizes when he says fear, he's like, you know, the reason why I control the city is because of fear. And when he says that, that's when Batman decides to go to China and basically on his mission to meet real criminals and to meet some crazy ass Chinese criminals, and then teach himself to basically become a weapon, essentially is what it is. And that's how he runs into Ra's al Ghul. And when he runs into Ra's al Ghul teaches him the ways of turning himself into a weapon, literally, with ninjutsu is basically what he learns. I mean, he learns a ton of martial arts, but ninjutsu is the biggest one. And becoming, I love this movie so much, man, because I love the concept of theatricality and deception, which is like a huge theme in the movie, and it's a huge theme in all three of the movies.
But it's a huge theme in Nolan's work in general.
True. Yeah. And he learns that theatricality and deception. So theatricality meaning something bigger than life, something crazy, like a giant bat attacking people. That's crazy. That's the theatricality. And the deception is making people believe that he has the ability to do supernatural stuff. Yeah. Like when people, that's what I like about Batman too, is like, and a lot of the comic books too, is like when people first are introduced to Batman, they think he's like an actual, like, you know, a giant bat. Remember in the movie, he's like, they say he got attacked by a giant bat. I mean, because they think it's like an actual giant bat, not like a man, but like a bat, like a giant bat, who's like a supernatural creature attacking criminals. And that's kind of what he's going for in the beginning. Like, he doesn't let himself get seen. He doesn't, because that's all a part of the theatricality and the deception. And then he realizes that the League of Shadows want to also use symbolism, because this movie is essentially about symbolism. So for Batman, for Bruce Wayne, the symbol of the bat is the symbol of, like you said, peace and justice, and a hard stance against crime, a very hard stance against crime. And then the League of Shadows want to do that times 10 by bringing the symbolism into burning down Gotham, literally destroying Gotham with the fear gas that they have. This movie is essentially all about fear.
Fear, that's the central theme, I think,
of this movie, because they want to destroy, like freaking Ra's al Ghul says in the movie. He says, you know, watch Gotham tear itself apart through fear, is what he's trying to do, because he realizes that fear is the biggest weapon, and he wants to destroy Gotham as a symbol of destroying corruption. So, you know, like he said in the movie, burning down Rome, or, you know, letting the plague invade London, all that stuff that the League of Shadows has done is a version of their purification of the city, and as like a restart button kind of thing, where they're just like, this city's so messed up that let's literally tear it down so that everyone else in America can be like, look at Gotham. Holy shit, let's not be Gotham, guys. Because Gotham literally got blown to hell because they were so crime-ridden that the rest of the U.S. can see that as a symbol of, like, damn, Gotham was so corrupt that they killed each other. They all literally went in the streets and ate each other's faces off. So, like literally,
like Florida Man in Atlanta.
But that's exactly. But that's literally what it is. It's like that is a symbol of, like, look how far corruption can take us and tear us apart. Let's not be Gotham, and let's make new laws to fix this shit, right? That was the idea of the League of Shadows, and Batman was like, that's too much, man. Like, I think beating up bad guys is way better than burning down a city and, you know, letting people kill each other. But essentially, that's what the theme of the movie is. It's about fear and about how to weaponize it. And Batman uses it to weaponize it against crime, and the League of Shadows want to use it to weaponize it like to a times 10 against crime by literally destroying the city and symbolizing what corruption can make a city become. Ashes, essentially, is what it makes it become. So I love those themes, and I love the way they bring it up in the movie. I love how they use Scarecrow as a way to symbolize that, as a way to symbolize fear, and then the deepest fears of people coming to life, and how Batman was so afraid of bats that he uses that fear to attack criminals and terrify them, essentially. But that's essentially what it is. It's the extremism of crime being met by the extremism of the Dark Knight, which is Batman. And that is, I think that's beautiful. Like, that's amazing writing right there. Like, that's a great adaptation of like a Batman Year One that Christopher and Jonathan did for this movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, this movie was originally supposed to be Batman Year One, directed by our boy, first episode, Darren Aronofsky. And yeah, he was originally supposed to be attached to this.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah. Wolfgang Peterson was also somebody who was put into consideration. So definitely, you know, Warner Bros. Knew they were definitely going for a more adult, more mature Batman figure. And they probably hit the ball as close to when it comes to the idea of realism in a superhero film as it could get in this movie. There's not really too much like outlandish in this film that happens, you know, outside of, you know, the kooky gas like coming up out of the sewers at the end, you know, like
what?
You remember how out at the end there's like that one section of Gotham that like the fear, was it the gas, right?
Yeah,
it just like pops up out of the sewers. Yeah, it's a little comic booky,
but that's cool though. It's cool comic booky. Everything in this movie is intentional. Like I'm telling you, man. Like every comic booky thing that you see like that, Nolan knew that was comic booky, and that's why he put it in there. Yeah. Like that's so like comic booky and so good that it's just like, let's take those elements of the comic book and amplify it into the movie. I just think it's so well handled, the way he takes like little comic book things and like dabbles it throughout the movie. Like he just puts it in.
He kind of like throws all that away in The Dark Knight though.
He kind of, yeah, but I don't know though, man. The Dark Knight is just so good too. But let me finish up on Batman Begins and then we'll move on. And for me, when it comes to Batman Begins, just the idea of my favorite Batman villain. I know everyone's is the Joker, but mine is Ra's al Ghul from the comic. So in the comic book, Ra's al Ghul is actually it's mainly pronounced Rage in the Batman animated series, but he's essentially like this crazy ancient being who's like obsessed with challenges and obsessed with challenging Batman and obsessed with being the best. And the League of Shadows is the League of Assassins, and that's his organization. And essentially they kept those same themes as far as like they're obsessed with like extreme justice and all that stuff as far as the League of Assassins for Ra's al Ghul. But the way they adapted him in this movie with Liam Neeson, who I think is amazing in this movie, and the way they break down the concept of the League of Shadows and the way Batman is taught how to fight. I love that ice scene when they're fighting on the ice, and when he's like, you know, you can take down 6 men, I can teach you to engage 600. That those lines are just so good. And then him teaching him about being extremely secretive and being quiet and being aware of his surroundings and being aware of where he is. Those themes are cool to me because I think Ra's al Ghul is just the ultimate villain because his evil comes within his kind of abomination of idealism, right? Because that's essentially what he is. Like they're both idealists, but his idea, his philosophy is so corrupt within himself. He's essentially a terrorist because that's what a terrorist is, right? People view terrorism as people coming and doing crazy stuff and just laughing and running away. No, that's not what it is. Terrorism is very focused. It has a purpose. It has a message. You blow something up and then you say the reason why this was blown up is because of this. It's very much ISIS. It's very much Al-Qaeda. It's very much a traditional terrorist organization is what the League of Shadows is in this movie. Because the reason why they want to blow something up is to teach people a lesson, or to say you're sinners kind of thing. And that's kind of what Al-Qaeda would do. And that's kind of what, ISIS does. ISIS, kills sinners and does terrorist acts as a way to punish people. So like you said before, this is very much a response to 9/11 and Osama bin Laden. And that's kind of what Ra's al Ghul is in this movie. It's like a definition of what a terrorist is, which is saying, hey, I'm going to punish you guys. And the only way to stop this punishment is to like change your ways kind of thing, and turn away from evil and doing evil to say that you're evil kind of thing, which is crazy. Like that the fact that Nolan was willing to tackle that is just a testament within itself. So, good deal. Let's move on to The Dark Knight. Now, The Dark Knight is still considered to be one of, if not the greatest comic book movie of all time. And I can't lie, man, I recently rewatched this one for this episode, and The Dark Knight, it still holds up, man. It's still the greatest comic book movie of all time. I don't care what people say. I don't care if people are now starting to turn against it now, because it's become so like everyone says it's the greatest thing ever. And it's like, after a while of hearing it people just get bitter towards it, as far as like, all right, enough, it's overrated kind of thing. But to be honest, it's not overrated. It's still great, man. It still holds up. I rewatched it like 2 nights ago, and it's great. Now this one is very much even more focused on crime than Batman Begins, and where crime gets you. And it's even more focused on the symbol of Batman kind of taking things too far. What I love about this movie is that, in a way, Batman didn't create the Joker, but he kind of invited the Joker.
He created him.
He did create the Joker, but in not in a literal sense, but in a sense of like, Batman's presence in Gotham is what made the Joker go to Gotham and cause all this crazy chaos.
Well, it's fear striking. It's fear fighting other fear, right?
Correct.
It's chaos, and that's what
extremism.
The Joker. Yeah. It's the Joker's whole MO is the fact that Batman strikes fear into the criminals. The Joker just scares them more, right? And we see that in the opening scene where he walks in and the mob smashes dude's head in with a pencil.
Yeah.
We
get to see a magic trick.
Yeah. And again, he for one, he exposes why the people of Gotham are scared of Batman, and kind of sees through that, and then he uses that and flips that on people to get them more scared of him, by making very public threats, by making very loud presence. Like this is probably one of the first comic book villains that actually implements like television into their whole MO, the influence of the media, the influencing of newspapers and all that kind of stuff, how that influences fear and hysteria inside of the people of Gotham, and that's what rouses up chaos, and that's what rouses up attention, and what strikes into the madness inside of the city.
Yeah, it's crazy, because it really is like the reason why the Joker exists in Gotham City in this movie. Like, we're gonna talk about this movie, guys, because I know there's 1,000 comic books on the Joker, but we're specifically talking about Nolan's Joker, and Nolan's Joker is a direct response to Batman. The reason why Joker is in Gotham is because of Batman. That's like his other side of the coin, if you could say. Which, funny enough, is Harvey Dent too. Harvey Dent. We'll get into Harvey later, but essentially that's what it is. It's theatricality and deception from the other side, from the Joker's side, which is very interesting. Like you said, theatricality, the media, the TV, all that stuff. The Joker knows that he has an audience. And if Batman had an audience in there, what can the Joker do with his audience, kind of thing? Yeah. Like, if people are responding to to Batman in this movie, The Dark Knight, Batman's in his prime. Like, he's kicking ass. Like, he's really kicking ass and taking names. And if people have responded to Batman in Gotham City in a positive light, like, he's very positive. The cops like him. Gordon likes him.
The criminals are scared.
The criminals are scared. Like he has a very positive outlook. Like, if you ask a normal Gotham citizen in this movie, what do you think of Batman? Like, at the beginning of the movie, he's like, oh, Batman's awesome, man. He's like saving the day. And the Joker sees that, and he's like, oh, people like this guy. Let me go over there and just, tear shit up, because if they're letting this insane guy because he's crazy, Batman, run around in a bat suit, then what can I do with this audience? If Gotham City is like
in such need
of a crazy symbol, what can I symbolize? And it's just, it's so good, man. But essentially, this movie is. Let's talk about that opening scene, man. One of the greatest opening scenes I've ever seen in any movie, man. I love that opening scene with the Jokers robbing the bank. And killing them off one by one until you realize that the last one is the Joker. I don't know about you, but when I first saw that, I freaked out, man. I loved it because I didn't see that coming. At first, I really thought it was like, oh, these are the Jokers, man, and they're going to steal money for the Joker. I never saw it coming that the Joker was actually like one of those guys, and that he was actually the one like setting this whole thing up.
Right.
And that to me is like one of the greatest opening scenes. And the fact that he did that, the Joker did that to specifically steal from the mob so he can get the mob's attention.
Yeah.
Because remember, that bank was mob money. And that's why the guy, what's the guy with the shotgun? What's his name? The actor's like and everything.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He comes out and he's like, you know who you're stealing from? Because he's stealing like freaking Maroni's money, the mob's money. And the reason why the Joker did that was to get the attention of the mob. So he can eventually be like, hey, hire me and you'll get your money back, kind of thing.
Right. And it's interesting. You see like why the Joker kind of strikes fear into people the most. I mean, you even see it in that scene where Batman throws off the old homie when he's in the club, and then he breaks his legs, and like the reason he says is like, nobody's gonna talk to you because you have a code. The Joker, he has no code, and that's kind of the division. Like they both represent the same thing. It's just how far in the extreme are they gonna express that. So it's fascinating having a villain that's kind of a mirror image of the hero while also being the complete opposite of the hero, just in terms of like literal, makeup. Like the Batman is dark, he's black, all black, kind of fit. The Joker literally has white face paint, a standard suit, and weird makeup and crazy makeup. And while we know all of Bruce Wayne's story, we know nothing about where the Joker comes from, who he is, what he represents. And is he from Gotham? Has he traveled to Gotham? We don't know, and we're not sure. And I think that's what's the most present about that.
It's so good, dude. That's the number one thing I took away from my recent viewing of the Dark Knight is the Joker and how he's kind of like a supernatural being. In the sense of like he's got no background, he's got no history, he's got no actual identity. Like I love the scene when Commissioner Gordon says like we checked his prints, we checked his clothes, we checked everything. Like this guy is like nobody and we don't know where he came from. So I love like that mystery because you can kind of try and figure out where he came from. Like I was thinking about it. I was like, where did the Joker come? Was like he like living in some other city doing crazy shit and then he learned about Gotham City and Batman and be like, yo, I'm going to Gotham, man. Gotham's lit. Because I'm curious as far as like what he is. But that's what I love about the Joker and partly in the comic and partly Nolan's Joker is the fact that he is a kind of like an abomination of pure genius and pure insanity at the same time, which is kind of crazy, but it's true. Like rewatching this movie, man, he has so many layers to his plans. It's nuts, like how many layers he has. He's like, I have this, then I have this, then I have this, and if this fails, then this. Then if the boats don't blow up, then the boat's here. Then either way, I'm gonna get Harvey Dent. Then if he turns, I'm gonna blow up him. I'm gonna tell him that Rachel is over here, when in reality Harvey's over there, and he's gonna try and save Harvey because I know he's gonna go after Rachel. Because remember, he says like Rachel's here, Harvey's here. And that scene where
flip him up,
that interrogation scene, and then when Batman opens the door and he sees Harvey, he's like, shit.
Yeah.
He lied to me. I believe this guy. And he told me that Rachel was here, but it was actually Harvey. Because Joker knew that he'd rather save Rachel than Harvey because Joker saw his reaction to Rachel falling out of the window.
Yeah.
Like all those double meanings and double things as far as what the Joker saw in Batman and be like, oh, I know what he's going to do. Therefore, I'm going to do this and save Harvey, knowing that he's going to lose his girlfriend or his, soon-to-be wife, fiance. And make Harvey super bitter towards everyone as far as losing that. And then that will corrupt Harvey Dent, which will then destroy all the work he's done, which will then corrupt. It's just so many layers and it's just so good. Like the Joker he really is the greatest villain I think I've seen on pretty much any movie, man. Like, he really is that good. It's crazy how many layers to his plan he had. It wasn't just exploding boats of moralism or morality, but essentially that's what he is in Gotham for. He is in Gotham for anarchy and for, showing the true colors of humanity and how even the best of the best can be corrupt. And that's what essentially the comic book history of the Joker is. Of one bad day, it takes one bad day to become the Joker, and that's his background too, as far as like in the Killing Joke and another his origin stories. But that's what essentially he wanted to do to Harvey Dent was to give him, just obliterate him. And he knows how to destroy people, like morally on the inside. He knows how to destroy them, because all he has to do is like target what they love, and that's so key to his character.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's what strikes the most fear into people. I think what also strikes fear into people is the fact that the Joker is so anti-establishment. He does not want to play by the rules. He does not cooperate with the police, the mob. He runs on his own agenda. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah, it's very much like he's a pure anarchist. It's what is it? Nihilism. As far as like everything is useless and it's worthless and it's pointless. It's one big joke is what it is to the Joker. As far as like institutions and police departments and order and all this stuff, and order doesn't exist to him. Order is just a something that humans try to obtain, but it's pointless and essentially. So what he tries to do is to take away all that order, strip it all down, and let nature, like he says in the hospital scene with Harvey Dent, like he breaks down his philosophy mainly in that scene where he talks about how like, I'm just a dog chasing a car. Yeah. Like I don't have a purpose. My purpose is to show you the uselessness and the pointlessness of institutions. Yeah. Institutions are pointless. Government is pointless.
He's an agent of chaos.
Agent of chaos is what he is. And when he strips that all down, then the natural order of humankind is what's good in this world. Whether that be craziness, whether that be goodness, whatever that is, just true utter chaos is what he's there to represent. And also to show morality of the people.
Yeah, and I think that's where a little bit of those conservatism things of Mr. Nolan kind of dives in a little bit too, because frankly, the Joker does not trust the government. Who, by the way, and they address more of like what the Dent Act means and the Dark Knight Rises. But what Harvey Dent is essentially doing, cleaning up the streets of Gotham, having like this white knight kind of savior complexity to him. He represents much more of the same two-faced politicians that represent the people whose purposes, whose goals are not to please the established order, but rather to re-win elections, and that's what Harvey's kind of concerned about for a good chunk of the first half of the movie. And the Joker sees that, exploits that, and sees, this guy, he's on the establishment side, but I can exploit him, I can manipulate him and turn him into this agent of anti-establishment. And I think, hey man, listen, you know how I feel politically. I think I'm very anti-establishment. So in categorizing the Joker in that same kind of sense, kind of shows you, it's the rich billionaire who's kicking poor people in the nuts at night in a black suit. How he's praised, but where there's somebody who's looking to tear down the establishment, and Joker's what he's doing in this movie. He's killing the corrupt judges that Ra's al Ghul wanted to kill in the first one. So it's interesting to see. He's the extremist of like what an anti-conformist, anti-establishment Marxist would represent. He's the extreme of that. And I think, it's essentially villainizing that, so it's interesting, I think.
Well, he's villainizing it because he's murdering people, though.
Right.
But when you start killing people, and you start laughing when they die, it's kind of...
Right. But what the Joker represents as a figure in this movie, putting that in the villain shoes, whereas Batman in this movie essentially is saving the day by by crashing his Lambos into people, and I think that's where the movie kind of offers like the difference in morality and choices. The whole thing with the prisoners on one boat and the average civilians on the other boat. That kind of whole morality question is the fact that those two groups are kind of pent against each other as if not being the same thing. The fact that discussion even happens is kind of more of a for lack of a better terms, what some people would consider a more conservative, a more like fascist kind of ideology. Oh, we have to kill the criminals in order to save the normal people and save the normal folks. It's interesting that this movie kind of dives into that. Not only that, I mean, Batman, he's not only working with the police, they're fucking buddy. They're chummy together. Like, whereas opposed to the Batman Begins, the police are running them off, chasing them off the entire time. Here, they're like actually collaborating. Batman's in the interrogation room with them. I think that's a different approach to Batman as well. Whereas, we usually see kind of like the war. But I'm talking about cinematically.
I was gonna say in the comic books.
Yeah, cinematically, yeah. we see more of the cat and mouse game the police is playing with the Batman character, where he's very the Batman character himself, as presented in multiple movies, is not pro police essentially. He's a straight up vigilante. This one here, he's a little more conformed to the established order in Gotham, and he's a part of it, frankly, because he's a symbol that's supposed to represent it. But because he is not necessarily the most clean symbol, because he's not the most upright, moral, responsible person, he looks to somebody like Harvey Dent to kind of take over that spot, to be like the White Knight to his Dark Knight. But then of course, Harvey Dent's, Harvey Dent, again, like I said, he represents like the kind of the pseudo politician that preaches positivity and preaches incarceration, but is really incarcerating violent criminals, but is really there for re-elections, holding fundraisers. He even caves in, of course, Rachel convinced Bruce Wayne to throw a fundraiser for him. But even that, and again, that's another example of the Joker coming up and busting that event up too. So it's really fascinating how this movie kind of toes the line between whether it's pro anti-establishment, anti-establishment, which I guess is just establishment, and where does Batman fall in that spectrum?
Yeah, or do you feel like the movie even takes a side though? Because the movie just presents what would the case be like? Because I feel like,
no, I think it takes a side.
You feel like it does? Because the Joker comes in, right? And the Joker first is bought by the mob because he buys his way into the mob when he says, hey, I'll do it, I'll kill Batman. And then his war on Batman is essentially, I'll keep killing people if you don't reveal who you are. That's his war against Batman. And then his war against Harvey Dent is, I'm going to take down Harvey Dent because he claimed to be Batman. So essentially his war is just personally with Batman, but he knows that when it comes to the people of Gotham, murder is the easiest thing to get people upset and to get people riled up, right? Because that's what he says essentially in the scene.
He says he upsets the established order too.
Yeah,
that's what. I think his methods. Well, of course, his methods of convincing Gotham is through fear, but it's also. I think what makes him so efficient as the villain is the fact that he shines a light on the internal corruptions of the system. And I think, the fact that he shines a light on the corruption of the police department, the fact that he highlights the fact that Batman gets to be this anonymous figure that gets to run around and fight bad guys, he kind of exposes Gotham's frustration with that to a certain extent. And but ultimately, I think what this movie says is that, hey, no matter what, we're still always going to have the Batman's back. And what I interpret the Batman to be is the rich white dude who goes out in the streets and kicks poor people, as they say in the Lego Batman movie. So yeah, it's definitely a predicament, but I think the intention has become more clear in The Dark Knight Rises for me. Definitely, I think The Dark Knight Rises is probably the most political out of all three of the
Of the
Nolan.
three films.
Yeah.
But for me, I mean, it comes down to what the Joker is there to represent, and if it's true anarchy. I don't know, because what I love about this movie too is how the Joker shows how corruption can be handled by two simple things, and that's literally targeting one thing over the other. Right? He does that with Batman, he does that with Harvey, and he does that with every character in this movie. And essentially, the Joker does that with Commissioner Gordon in The Killing Joke, is that all he does is he realizes that the quickest way to get someone to turn as in like turn evil or turn messed up or turn morally corrupt, is target their loved ones. He does that with Ramirez, Detective Ramirez. You know, remember the character?
Yeah.
Where he turns her literally by saying, "Hey, give me Harvey Dent, give me Rachel Dawes, or I kill your mom." Yeah. And it's that all of a sudden it's like she's like, "Well, I guess I got to give you Harvey Dent. And I got to do all this crazy stuff, and I got to work for you." And then with Harvey Dent, it's essentially like, "Well, I'll kill Rachel," and all of a sudden this guy is just going to turn into a crazy person. And it's true, he does. And then in the Killing Joke, the comic book, it's Commissioner Gordon. It's like, I'll shoot, what's her name, Barbara Gordon, his daughter. You saw The Killing Joke too.
Yeah.
And I'll embarrass her, and I'll destroy her, and I'll corrupt her, and I'll do all this crazy shit. And Commissioner Gordon's going to turn into essentially that the way he targets loved ones is such an interesting concept because it's so true. Like, all you have to be is like, "Hey, I'll kill your daughter," or "I killed that guy," and you're like, "Well, kill that guy." I don't know that guy. But essentially, that's what he does throughout the whole movie. Is like he targets loved ones to get Ramirez, to get Harvey, to even Batman, to get Batman to basically turn on the city. Batman essentially turns on the city by choosing Rachel over Harvey. If you think about it, when he went to go save Rachel instead of Harvey Dent, the right thing to do, if he was truly Batman and truly like not corruptible, he would have gone to save Harvey because Harvey's the symbol, right? He's more important. But he went to save Rachel, and then he found Harvey, and he's like, "Crap, I wanted it to be Rachel because I wanted Rachel to be safe." Yeah. But that's essentially what the Joker does to break Batman down, and the fact that his plan was never going to be finished, because all this movie comes down to is symbolism, and the way they symbolize Harvey is through a lie at the end of the movie, by saying he was morally incorruptible and by saying he was the White Knight, when in reality he wasn't. So they create a lie and say, "Hey, this is your figure, this is your symbol, Harvey Dent. He is your Christ-like figure," even though in reality there's no such thing, and it's a completely made up symbol, so that the people in Gotham can take a hard stance against crime, essentially, is what it is. And that's the whole plan of Batman and the police and Commissioner Gordon, right? Because he represents the police, is to say, Harvey Dent represented good. If he dies a good man, that means we can use him as a symbol to stop bad guys. And that essentially is what the Harvey Act is. What is it? The Dent Act. Which is essentially like super, crazy powers towards the police department. Police.
And I think that's one of the other things that Dark Knight explores really well, is the ethics of what Batman does, particularly with that sonic technology. Especially again, I'm talking about the Patriot Act that was signed by the Bush administration, I believe in 2002, if I'm not mistaken. That's the technology that allows essentially the NSA to spy on you, to have all your cell phone information and all that stuff. And a lot of people consider that an overreach and over-governing of control. Meanwhile, our hero, Batman, is implementing that technology.
It's beautiful, though.
It's a safe...
Remember he says that?
Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful spying on motherfuckers. Yeah. Sure it is.
Morgan Freeman said he says he doesn't like it.
Yeah. And, that's the counter... That's the only counter argument we get in there, of course, by Morgan Freeman. Salute to Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
So, again, that's another morally corrupt kind of ideology that we have to be okay with. And that's another thing that, frankly, the Patriot Act was enacted. It kind of violates the Eighth Amendment, to unreasonable search and seizure. But that was a policy implemented because of fear after 9/11.
Sure.
And that is something that, Republicans have held on close to their vest since being signed. And now that we have, the whole NSA stuff breaking out with the whole with Edward Snowden and WikiLeaks. I don't know. Did you see that Citizen 4 documentary? Like
No, I didn't.
the one about Edward Snowden.
No.
Fantastic documentary, man. It really goes into how all the corporate powers had their hands in the whole spying thing, from the AT&T, Verizon, all the way up to the federal government. And I'm making that point to kind of allude to the what Batman in this movie is doing. I mean, of course that's detective work. Of course that's echolocation or whatever. But it is still spying on people. And are we okay with our morally upright hero who doesn't murder people and we're supposed to get behind because of that? Be okay with him spying on other people just to catch the bad guys.
Yeah, that's why I think it's an interesting point, because
Yeah.
it brings up that question. I think it brings it up, man. Like, I know you're saying that you think it like says that Batman's. I don't know. Does it say Batman's right? Because
He saves the day.
Fox says that he's wrong.
But then he doesn't do anything about it.
But does he save the day though? Does he?
They saved the day, and that's saying, hey, it's cool to spy on people because we're gonna catch the terrorist.
But once he catches the terrorist, he still loses at the end, and he has to make something up in order for him to claim victory. But he still lost. He still lost.
There's wins and losses.
Joker still won. Like, Joker won that shit.
Well, I don't know if he won. I think the whole idea is to dismantle the symbol of Batman. But I think the symbol of Batman, I think the symbol of Batman kind of transcended into the symbol of Harvey Dent, into the White Knight, into the Dent Act. So I think it's both a win and loss. The whole movie, Bruce Wayne is trying to take his responsibilities and dump them on a more reputable, more credible individual like Harvey. I think that's his whole MO throughout the entire movie. And on that front, he does accomplish that goal. So he does win. But then you're right. Joker does win in the fact that he's alienating Batman, kicking him out the town, essentially. But there's also something to be said that the Joker loses too. I mean, his whole plan of using his anti-establishment rhetoric and creating chaos in the city through his murders
creates more.
Yeah, that will only creates more chaos. But essentially, he loses that at the end too, because we see like the boats don't make a decision. Neither of them kill each other.
But that wasn't his main plan, though. That's what's great about the Joker, is that his main plan was Harvey the whole time. So like that whole boat thing was just like hey, let's try this out, and if it doesn't work, I still got the Harvey thing in my back pocket, because I know Harvey is gonna get corrupted. Yeah. Because I talked to Harvey. I literally sat down with him and had a conversation.
He did get corrupted, but the symbol of Harvey Dent was not corrupted.
But here's the thing: does the Joker's plan eventually be revealed at the end? Because in Dark Knight Rises, the Harvey Dent does get corrupted.
That's what I was going to say.
So Joker does win.
Well, I was going to say, he didn't win in that movie, though. What won in that movie was Bane. And The Dark Knight Rises.
But Bane is a direct response to the Joker.
Not necessarily. He's more of a...
Because the Bane's whole thing...
He's a direct response to order.
Correct.
To peace.
But specifically towards the Dent Act, which is a law based on a lie in order to lock up more prisoners in the Blackgate prison. And the way that he says, I'm going to release these prisoners because they fell on the sword for a guy who was just as corrupted as we are, and based on a lie that the commissioner decided to tell us, and that Batman decided to, go along with in order to complete the lie, essentially is what it was.
Right, but he used the pseudo, he used that rhetoric, he used the idea, the platform of dismantling the Dent Act, just to create further social unrest. I think his main antagonist. I think he was attacking the image of the Dent Act, and I guess you can relate that to the Joker, but I think that's less to do with the Joker winning, but more to do with society waking up at the hands of realizing that this lie took place. It wasn't like the Joker enacted the lie of corruption to that. That was Commissioner Gordon. Commissioner Gordon falls on the sword of creating that lie in the first place and building this 8-year gap, a period of peacefulness, of sanctity in the city on this lie. And I think that's what it comes down to essentially at the end of the day with the Dark Knight Rises, with Bane's plan. His plan is not to liberate the city or to free the people, even though that's what he speaks, and we're gonna get to that more as we discuss that movie more. But
well, let's do it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, again, I think this movie is the clearest definition of where the politics of Mr. Nolan are most visible here. And I think, this movie came out in 2012 at the heat of the Occupy Wall Street movement, where people, where the common folk, not, the common middle class were frustrated with the government corruption, with the Wall Street, with everything that, these big wig financial corporations were doing to screw over the American people, and they resisted hard. And this movie depicts that in a more, but it depicts it and also villainizes it too. It puts Bane on the cheerleading side of the people who are oppressed, of the poor people who, and you see the conditions in Gotham are just getting worse and worse as time goes by. You see orphans, fighting for food. The chick that Catwoman lives with, played by Juno Tempo, she has she's stealing. Everybody's stealing because the rich are just getting richer and richer, the poor getting poorer and poorer at the hands of this Dent Act, at the hands of incarcerations, at the hands of being spied on by everybody, and and not over government, but like over policing. And living in that age of Gotham City of over policing and of shitty financial positions, leads to this uprising. And I think that's why this movie came under a lot of heat when it was initially released, because all they really showed in the movie of The Dark Knight Rises is that, hey, prisoners should get released. And then boom, everybody, like all of the rest of the people are like resisting the government. Like there's no logical end ground, because you're clearly supposed to be on the side of Batman. You're clearly supposed to be on the side of, you're supposed to be on the side of, hey, rich person, please come back and defend the city. And that's how they do it. Batman, and I think that's the whole problem. I think that's what makes the first two Nolan Batman so genius, but I think what makes the third one fall apart is that the symbol of Batman is not for the people, it's for the establishment. It's for established order. And, and that's even demonstrated at the end where Batman's fighting alongside with the cops against the common people of Gotham. Literally, the police are fighting common people in Gotham because
I think it's like Bane's mercenaries, isn't it?
But it's the revolution that's happening at in general. Like we see, like it's not just the mercenaries that are dragging the rich people out of their rich apartments and stuff like that. It's the common people, because again, it's a social revolution. It's this movie is directly inspired by Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, a movie about the French. A book about the French Revolution, and the problems that Gotham were plagued with are the same kind of problems that were plagued by the people during the French Revolution, and that were plaguing the American people during that time, 2011, 2012, during the Occupy Wall Street movement. So it's interesting to see how Nolan uses the plight of the people as the villain, as the agent that leads to this cause, this riot, these weird court cases where Scarecrow is the judge, where prosecution on the rich people is just like walking them out into the ice and letting them freeze to death, because it's the establishment finally being broken up and power being put in the hands of the people, and that being the villain side of the coin is problematic.
It's Nolan saying, you need the establishment and you need the rich people in power, because otherwise these crazy poor people are gonna tear shit apart, bro.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree, man.
Whoa.
All poor people gotta go to prison, bro. Yeah, it really is. Like, it's the Dent Act kind of representing how, over policing and overpower led to unrest, and then the unrest led to social corruption, and
then Bane swoops in and
capitalizes on people's frustration.
And that's we talk politics on the show, people. Sorry. But I mean, that's kind of what the whole Trump administration kind of got off the backs of, is like, of course they said some very racist, very problematic things on the campaign trail.
Sure.
But he also campaigned on ending trade deals, He said at some points he's not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. He was looking into positive things that the American people actually wanted. Of course, a lot of other racist shit, but the problematic shit that he was saying. People in Middle America were so frustrated by the way the system has been putting them down. Be fair, by the Obama administration to some extent, but also reminiscences of past administrations too. But the people in Middle America have been put so down by the foreign trade deals, the jobs leaving America, that they're so frustrated that they're gonna that this outsider, and Bain's an outsider, and Trump's the outsider in politics, we're going to trust this racist, bigoted, crazy looking outsider to tear down the establishment, because we don't want the establishment anymore. And that's essentially what Bain is doing in this movie too. And of course, Batman is the one who represents like you said, the established order, the billionaires who need to come in and save the day, and remind of the symbol of hope. That's why we see the whole fire of Batman's ring in there. You have reminding people that Batman's back. But yeah, it's like, okay, here, we're gonna put the establishment back in order. I'm gonna, we're gonna hand it back to the people, and everything's just gonna be just fine. I think that's where movie gets
it's Batman. Batman represents the order that is needed in Gotham in order for Gotham to succeed. Almost like you need that symbol of law and order to take over the city of Gotham, and that's why Batman has to come back and has to overcome his fear or whatever, and climb out of that cave or prison or whatever it is.
Lazarus Pit,
yeah,
and a biblical reference, by the way,
but that's also from the comics, man. That's from years of comic books.
But fucking the Bible came
I know, but I'm saying the Lazarus Pit is part of Ra's al Ghul's.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's also. I mean, the comic books probably took from the Bible in the sense of rebirth, right?
Sure.
the Lazarus in the Bible is revived by Jesus Christ.
It's rising again, yeah.
Rising again, and that's what Batman essentially does in this movie.
Yeah.
Now, how does he get from the Lazarus Pit to Gotham? We're not sure.
That's one of the flaws of the movie. I agree with that flaw. I mean, I don't know. He took an overnight flight, man.
Hey, listen, I'm not trashing The Dark Knight Rises, by the way. I think The Dark Knight Rises is great.
I think it's great too. I think it's great too. I'm one of the people who defend this movie as being an actual great movie.
Yeah, it is.
But it's funny hearing your thoughts on this, because in a way it's kind of true. What Bane. But at the end of the day, Bane's whole purpose was still to keep Ra's al Ghul's memory and blow up Gotham as a way. Because remember, at the end of the day, they say, "Oh yeah, it's the bomb is gonna go off no matter what." Yeah. Is what they say it is.
Yeah.
So essentially, Bane is riling all these people up, almost to say, "Hold on, I got this." Almost to say that all this social unrest and all these prisoners out of prison and all these poor people rising up against the rich people blows up Gotham City. And that's why Gotham got blown up, because all these poor people got the power and they blew each other up. Yeah. In the end of the day, Dark Knight Rises comes back to Batman Begins, where the League of Shadows wanted to blow up Gotham City in a different way, obviously, but still at the end of the day blow it up to symbolize how corruption can obliterate a city, and to show the rest of the U.S. what happens when corruption takes over. So essentially, Bane is reliving or fulfilling Ra's al Ghul's destiny, as he says in the movie, by blowing up Gotham City and showing that this, morality is based on order, and in order to be moral, you need to have establishment in order. So, and if it's not in order, then the poor people or the oppressed will rise up and blow each other apart.
Yeah, and that's a very
that's the truth, baby.
That's a very
poor people in prison, bro.
That's a little fascist, Ace. I'm not gonna lie to you. What do we have here? Joseph Stalin in this no, I mean,
not me. That's not me. That's what Nolan.
Well, that's what it's Nolan. Yeah. And of course, I mean, that's why I think this movie takes a lot of heat from a lot of liberal circles because of what it's saying, because of what it represents.
Yeah, but it's still a good movie.
It's still a great movie. It's such a great movie, by the way.
It is.
That Blade Runner 2049 stills its ending. Blade Runner 2049 stills the Dark Knight Rises ending.
What?
With the whole, like, Talia al Ghul being really the little kid with the shaved head and the little pits. We're in the same thing in Blade Runner where Ryan Gosling
that's
is
a stretch.
That's not a stretch. They're shot the same way, same fucking color palette. I'm telling you, this is people. Watch the ending. Watch the twist in The Dark Knight Rises. Watch the twist in Blade Runner 20. Sorry if I spoiled Blade Runner 2049 for y'all, but it's been out for a while. We could talk about it.
Yeah, it's
6
not
months.
really a spoiler.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Look, you watch the twist in both of those movies. The exact same twist. They're almost shot the same way. Same bald head, little kid who you think is a boy turns out to be a girl who's bald. Same ending.
All right, I disagree, but that's just me.
Yeah. So, kudos to The Dark Knight Rises for influencing one of the greatest science fiction sequels ever made.
Which it is.
It's not.
but yeah, The Dark Knight Rises, man. I don't know, because what do you feel? Because what I liked about this movie the most when I first watched it was the idea of resurrection and the idea of coming back and the idea of trying to how.
But then, okay, this is where I'm gonna fight you a little bit too,
okay.
Right? Because what the ending, you're right. What the ending of The Dark Knight represents is like the lie that covers up the truth, and how the lie of the Batman and of Commissioner Gordon is what influences peace among the people. Now this movie's whole idea is like, okay, let's not live in lies anymore. Let's take the truth. And let's have the truth be in the forefront in order to save the good people of Gotham. But at the end, it ends on another lie.
It does.
So doesn't that don't you think that defeats the purpose of having that thematic through line?
Kind of, yeah. It kind of does. It's a more layered question than you think. It seems to be a simple yes or no, but it's different. I don't know, because it almost feels like, in a way, the lie is a lie and it's still a lie no matter what. But at the end of the day, is it the truth? Didn't the Batman essentially die? Because I think the Batman is dead. What's left is just this,
the symbol of the Batman. In the same way that the symbol of Harvey Dent is left at the end of The Dark Knight.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, you're saying if Bruce actually died in that explosion, it would have been like a complete true ending, right?
Well, no, not necessarily. I don't know. I mean, if he would have died at the end, it would have, it probably would have made more sense thematically what the film was going for.
Sure.
But it ends on the lie that Bruce Wayne is still alive, living it up with Catwoman.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, if I'm sure Bruce would have died at the end, sure, it might have made more sense thematically with the whole thread of truth that ran throughout this movie. But he doesn't.
He doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, he dies, and it's like I said, the end of The Dark Knight is like, hey, the symbol of Harvey Dent means more than Harvey Dent. And this movie is saying the symbol of the Batman means more than the Batman.
Sure.
And that the lie that the image of the Batman must be upheld is the same.
Sure, like almost him dying for his true purpose, even though he didn't die. But that's the thing, though. Did he die? Like, in a way, he did kind of die. Like, Batman died, and Bruce Wayne is all that's left.
Well, Robin goes into the Batcave, and we are left to assume that he is going to take the place of the new Batman.
Yeah.
And because of the way that the movie, again, I think this is another problem, is the way that the movie establishes how dependent the city is on the Batman character, how the people of Gotham are so so stupid that they can't have a proper revolution, that they need a Batman character to maintain order and to maintain stability. That you need a new, so the symbol of the Batman stays alive, and the actual figure of the Batman stays alive when we see the Joseph Gordon-Levitt's Robin seemingly getting ready to take on the Batman mantle. So no, I don't think Batman's dead at all. Neither Bruce Wayne or Batman is actually dead in this movie.
But it's in a way, yeah, that's true. In a way, Batman has always represented that. Has always represented standing outside the law and kind of going against the city of, I'm sorry, the crime of Gotham City. Where that's an interesting question, right? Now I'm going to pose this question to you, which is always something interesting to pose, is the idea of Batman in the real world. Batman now in 2018. I love that SNL sketch, and I don't know if you saw that one, the Batman SNL sketch of Thanksgiving, I think it was. They had an SNL sketch of Batman, and essentially it's Kenan Thompson. What's the tall girl's name?
Which one?
From Ghostbusters. She's super tall.
Kristen Smith?
No.
Kristen Smith. Kristen Smith, fan of the show. How you doing, Kristen? Kristen Wiig.
No, not Kristen Wiig. She's super tall. It's not Lisa, is it?
Oh, Leslie Jones?
Leslie Jones.
Yeah.
And then the Hispanic girl. But they're all coming into Bruce Wayne's house.
Oh, I did see this.
Yeah, I showed you this, right?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
And I showed you this one because it's such an interesting point. Like, what would Batman look nowadays? And basically they're like, man, I was just walking outside and I was just like chilling and Batman just beats the crap out of me. And it's like Batman just beating the crap out of like racial minorities.
Yeah.
Because it's like, would Batman in 2018 be like kicking people's butt for selling some weed or some shit? Yeah. And then you hear about this crazy white rich guy who dresses up as a bat who beat the shit out of this black guy because he was selling weed to some guy. And it's like, it's such an interesting question because you're like, damn, that's kind of messed up. That sounds almost like, that almost sounds neo-Nazi-ish.
It is.
Where it's like this crazy neo-Nazi using weapons and using fear to take the law into his own hands to beat people up, and most of them are going to be racial minorities.
Yeah.
If they're going to be in major cities like a Gotham City. Remember that? What'd you think of that? Because I was like, yo, that's kind of true.
Yeah, I mean, again,
Batman is low-key kind of like a crazy,
he's a dick,
vigilante who, like, would Batman beat up like some guy who's like just selling pot?
Well, I sure hope not.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, would Batman just be beating up, 19-year-old kids who were like selling weed or some shit?
Hey, man.
Because that's what it is.
Yeah.
Because that's a crime too.
Yeah.
But it brings up a point, right? Where that's like, is that kind of what these movies are symbolizing? Where it's like Batman represents the Patriot Act, represents the Dent Act, a fictionalized version of that, where he's beating up poor people and oppressed people.
A Republican? Is that what you're asking? And the answer is yes. Yes, Batman is a Republican.
But as a Republican, I would think that's a step farther than Republican, don't you?
Yeah. No offense to our Republicans.
That's why people should believe in Superman. Superman is a true American hero. You hear that? He's an immigrant alien from another planet who shows his true colors and saves a people that doesn't deserve to be saved.
I feel like Superman would be like anti Colin Kaepernick, bro.
No.
Like Superman, he wears the American flag.
Hey, man, so does Obama. Obama wears the American flag. So does like a bunch of other Democratic politicians. For real though. Hey, man, I'm serious though. Like, most Democrats rep the American flag like crazy too.
No, definitely, yeah.
Then what's bad about the American flag now?
Nah, nothing bad about the American flag. I'm just saying I think Superman be mad about Colin Kaepernick.
Why would he be mad? I don't
know, man.
That's right. He's representing his freedom, just like anyone else is. Superman's true American, bro. Superman's not fake American. Superman's like the kind of American.
Superman's not even human.
Hey, Superman represents the true American way. Do you feel like America represents oppression towards people who don't stand against the American flag?
I think in many ways it does.
I think that I think the freaking what do they call face hugger? The face huggers is back, bro, and he's starting to jump on your face.
I know. Oh my God, Jesus Christ! My eyes. If you're not watching this on YouTube, people, I'm sorry you're not seeing this. My eyes are destroyed. God.
So for our Spielberg episode, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
This random creature got inside RB3's eye. and it started to like freaking eat his eyeball. I think it's back, man.
It's back. It's back. My eyes are destroyed.
It started to like take over his brain. And
watch the Spielberg part 2. The
please watch it. Watch the final episode. It's so funny.
Yeah.
But no, man, I really do feel like I think people misrepresent what the American flag represents. The American flag isn't a symbol of oppression and a symbol of like you have to stand for it. I don't think even ask a ton of military people and they would disagree with that.
No. I'm mostly joking.
Okay. I was gonna say it, man. Come on now.
Now the Confederate flag.
Yeah, that's
we need to
different.
talk about that. Right.
Hey, sometimes you gotta slap a trick. Shout out Colin Kaepernick.
This is second Atlanta reference on this episode, baby. Let's go.
And then I start crying. Oh my god, that's like my favorite part. If you don't watch Atlanta, watch it. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is Superman is the true American hero. I love Batman too, and I'm wearing a Batman shirt, so I'm obviously joking, but I still love Superman. But anyways, it's an interesting question, and I think this movie paints interesting questions, whether that be the right painting or whether that be the right representation of what it is up for debate. But whether it be interesting questions, I think it's interesting questions as far as what law and order represents, what crime represents, what extremism represents, as far as Batman being an extreme version of what a gang would be, or a crime infested city would be. It's all interesting, powerful, thematic, philosophical questions as far as crime, corruption, community, people, society as a whole. Which to me, I mean that should be enough to give Nolan all the awards.
Hey man, we talked a lot about the deeper meanings of these Dark Knight movies. By the way, I feel like people are going to come away from this, and go ahead, eat my ass in the comments all you want. But yeah, a lot of people.
He means that in a very polite, nice way. A nice eating.
A nice salad tossing. Go ahead for it.
Yeah.
I definitely think, a lot of people are going to say I hate the Batman. I don't. I think the Dark Knight trilogy is actually one of the top 5 trilogies of all time.
Top 2 trilogies.
Top 2.
Top 3, top 2, man.
Come on, man. You're talking about.
What do you? All right, name them. Name them right
Lord
now.
of the Rings, Toy Story. Toy Story's not. You don't think the Toy Story trilogy?
Toy Story's up there. Lord of the Rings.
You don't think the first trilogy? Oh man, come on.
Lord of the Rings is. I have my thoughts on Lord of the Rings. It's dope, but it's not as dope. It's more spectacle than anything else.
But the third,
it's just spectacle.
I think it's more than spectacle. But do you think the third film in the Lord of the Rings trilogy is better than the third film of this trilogy?
No, I think Dark Knight Rises is better.
Well, I do love Dark Knight Rises.
I think it's better.
I
think Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is I'm not gonna say overrated, but slightly overrated. I think it's slightly overrated. I think it's good. I mean, it's great. But it's giant spectacle and craziness and a bunch of craziness and names and shit. Whereas like this one actually deals with themes that are much more potent into our society. Whereas like the themes of the Elvish against the dwarves and all that, it's cool, it's interesting, but it's not as deep as these movies are. I think these movies are deeper. And I think the Joker is better than anything that the Lord of the Rings movies have done. Like the character of the Joker is like already better than freaking Saruman and all the other characters they have in there as far as villains.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, bro.
I look at a lot of the technical aspects.
It's great, but this one's technical too, man. This one's pretty spectacular.
The CGI, that one part where the helicopter's like flipping out in the Dark Knight. It's a little wonky. In that scene,
but one CGI versus like a ton of other movies that have kind of crappy CGI.
No, they don't have crappy. Nah, stop it. They don't have crappy CGI.
It's okay CGI.
The only bad CGI in the Lord of the Rings is the elephants at the end of Return of the King.
Say, there you go, just one and just one for Dark Knight.
No, there's a lot more
para que veas, güey.
Okay. Well, if we're going by that shit, how about the Godfather trilogy?
All right.
Of course, the Godfather Part 3.
Part 3, though,
is fake news. Godfather Part 3 is fake news.
Well, then that's not a trilogy. That's Part 1 and Part 2.
But
if it's Part 1 and Part 2, yeah, a trilogy. No,
you can measure the first 2 Godfathers and put that next to the 3 Dark Knight films. I'd almost say that's a fair comparison. But that doesn't count.
But it's not a trilogy.
Hey, but
that's you're ignoring Part 3.
Or you take the greatness. You take the greatness of the Godfather Parts 1 and 2, and the 1/4 of greatness that lies somewhere deep in the Godfather Part 3. Mix that all together. That's an
But that's not
incredible
what a
trilogy.
trilogy comparison is. A trilogy comparison is comparing all three movies. Not if the first two are better than these other three. It's about 3 against 3.
No, here's what I'm saying. If the Dark Knight trilogy, you say the first one's an 8, the second one's a 10, the third one's a 9.
That's not how trilogies. That's not how you measure
You add them all
trilogy.
up together, bro. That's 27.
But that's not
All
that's not how you measure
you
trilogies.
take-
Trilogies are measured through the thread that's connecting all three of the movies. The thread that Nolan created in these 3 movies, the connecting thread, how all 3 of them are connected, is better than how all 3.
But then
Godfather
I still
trilogies are.
think that
I'm not
the
saying
guy-
the first two. The first two is like those are. If you're saying best movie and sequel, Godfather is the top of that. You know, you have like the part 2. I mean, the other one would be like 21 Jump Street. Like that's probably it goes Godfather part 1 and 2, 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street. Those are like, but when it comes to trilogies, it's like the Dark Knight trilogy is up there. It's one of the greatest of all time.
I'd argue that the third. You talk about the thematic through line. I argue that the third film in the Dark Knight Rises kind of loses that thematic.
No, it
through
doesn't.
line.
It comes. It's literally symmetry. It's literally poetry as far as Batman Begins to Dark Knight Rises. It all comes back to Ra's al Ghul. It all comes back to destruction of Gotham. It all comes back to symbolism, fear. It's super thematically thread connected. It's super connected.
Where was Ra's al Ghul in the second one?
And the second one, it's what he created in Batman. What Ra's al Ghul created in Bruce Wayne and his idea and his symbolism as far as extreme attacking of crime, that's what Ra's al Ghul essentially wanted too. And that what that created was the villainization of the Joker. That all comes back, bro. It's genius. It's pure genius.
You don't think that what they established, that, like I said earlier, like the symbol of the White Knight versus the symbol of the Dark Knight at the end of the Dark Knight, at the end of the Dark Knight Rises, aren't those directly conflicting ideas? If we're saying
Not necessarily.
if we're saying that one is the agent of chaos, isn't it just a revolving cycle? We're ending on another, we're landing on another Batman.
You say revolving cycle. I say symmetry. I say poetry.
I think that's
what the Star Wars movies are.
No, okay, come on now.
Star Wars movies are a repeating cycle. That's what it is.
Yeah, but it's shitty.
It's not shitty. It's dope.
I don't know, man. I think it's kind of silly.
I think it's dope, man.
You can have poetry without every line rhyming with each other.
But the Dark Knight doesn't have every line rhyming with each other.
But then it still doesn't
Maybe
make thematic sense.
Star Wars does, but not Dark Knight. Dark Knight is not nearly as like crazy rhyming as you know Star Wars is, because Star Wars is like everything is exactly the same.
Listen, I don't disagree. I say top 5. You say top 2. I don't think it's top 2.
All right,
I think there's at least 2 or 3 trilogies.
You gotta name them, bro.
Hey, Toy Story, Lord of the Rings, The Godfather's Part 1 and 2.
That's not
Better trilogies.
That doesn't count. Let's get into questions from you guys. You guys left us a few questions on Sunday when I posted this video of us doing this real quick talk.
Ooh, yeah.
Tony Wagner says, what was your first experience like watching each of the movies of the trilogy for the first time?
Oh, yes.
That's a great question. I remember watching Batman Begins with my brother, opening night, 2005. We were in Phoenix, Arizona. I think it was my first year in Phoenix. And we went, it was a rainy night. I think it was November when it came out. I might be wrong. June. Okay, fine. Still a rainy night because we get storms in Phoenix in June. And it was one of those experiences that when I was watching it, it blew me away so much, man, watching it for the first time. In 2005, I was like a kid. I don't know how old I was. I was like, I don't know. I was young. I don't want to do the math right now, but I was young. I was a kid. And I remember watching that as like, I think I was like 13 or something. But as like a 13-year-old kid watching those movies, man, watching that first movie, I was blown away. I remember turning to my brother after the movie and being like, yo, that was better than I expected, man. That was some dope stuff. And then I remember buying the video game afterwards because there was a Batman Begins video game for the PS2, I think. Or it might have been the PS3, but I think it was for the PS2.
Yeah,
and
PS2.
For the PS2, yeah. And this is what essentially made this was the layout of Arkham Asylum, of the Arkham games. It was exactly like the Arkham games. This video game, yeah, where you like hide, interrogate, graph people, take them up to the ceiling, and basically do ninjutsu throughout the entire game. and it was interwoven within the movie, and it was such a good game. And I remember playing it and being like, yo, this is a dope game. And that's kind of what they took and created the Arkham games. And then watching The Dark Knight in 2008 opening night was crazy experience too. Once again, I saw it with my brother, and watching that movie also blew me away, because the audience watching that movie in a crowd is one of the best audience experience I've had. I told you before when I talked about Get Out, it was Get Out and The Dark Knight were like two of the biggest audience experiences I've ever had, because the audience was just vibing with like the Joker and like, what do you want to see, a magic trick and all that stuff, and like his crazy lines and all the twists and turns that the movie had. Like watching that movie with the sold out crowd opening night was amazing. And then finally with The Dark Knight Rises, I remember walking into that so hype. Like my brother and I were hype, and once again I saw it with him, and walking out being like, yo, I just witnessed dopeness. I just witnessed one of the greatest trilogies of all time, top 2. And just loving it, because it really is like, it's just dopeness all across.
The
man.
Before trilogy.
Huh?
The Before trilogy. Before Sunrise, before the ones with the Richard Linklater. Those 3 movies. Isn't that a better trilogy than Dark Knight?
The Before trilogy?
Yeah, before what was it? Before Sunrise, before Sunset, before Midnight? Are those the 3?
I have no idea. I don't
Oh,
think I've seen
yeah,
them.
okay. Great trilogy. The one with Ethan Hawke and Homegirl.
Oh, I think I've seen I don't think I've seen all 3 of those.
Oh,
man.
that's a
Are
great
they
trilogy.
good?
Yeah, that's a great trilogy, man.
I don't know.
Come on, man, give that a chance.
Oh, man.
All right, I'll break.
Talk about your first time.
Yeah, my first experience. Definitely The Dark Knight. I'm sorry, Batman Begins. I remember it came out in June, because I remember seeing it for my birthday. Because my birthday is in June. And that was like, we saw that like opening week. I think it came out June 16th, if I'm not mistaken. And my birthday is June 17th. So we saw that. Really enjoyed it. Really thought it was dope. The Dark Knight I didn't see way until later, because I was 2008. I was probably like 10 years younger than 21. Oh, so like 11. I was 11. So then like I was 11 when that came out. So my mom's obviously had to take me, and she wasn't trying to see the fucking. She saw the trailers. She wasn't trying to see like the Joker. Like that creeped the hell out of her. So we saw it way later. I had to like beg her for like weeks and weeks, please take me to see it. So like probably saw it in like middle of August to empty theater, but still was like mind blown by it. As like a little 11-year-old kid. And Dark Knight Rises, I remember that one. I was riding your boat, man. So hyped, so highly anticipated. I even did that whole thing. I remember AMC had that package where you saw Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and then Dark Knight Rises at midnight.
Yeah.
And I did that whole marathon, man.
What?
Yeah. And it was really nice seeing all 3 of those movies back to back, because you really do get. I was pulling your chain a little bit. I do think there is some thematic similarities, some thematic differences when you like really sit down and look at them. A lot of differences, some similarities though. So it was really nice to see the connective tissue there. Oh man, but I mean I don't know, man. It's a little tragic, but you remember like immediately like that whole like midnight shooting.
I do remember that.
Yeah,
was that Rises? That was Rises.
Rises,
right?
yeah, that was yeah. So like I remember like leaving the theater.
Me too, and hearing about
like
that.
3 a.m. and that was like the first.
And
thing
hearing about it, because I went the opening night.
Yeah.
So you hear about it when you
like
when you go.
out.
Yeah. I remember hearing about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was some real heartbreaking stuff.
It was.
But yeah, no, that's definitely but yeah, that's my first experience with that whole trip, and I have the whole box set, like the Collector's Nolan's edition, like that kind of shit.
I bought him too. Yeah, it's great. What's his face? Chris Katrev says, do you think Nolan shoots good fight scenes? I've always found the action in all his movies to be rather lacking. The Bane Batman fight to me was almost as bad as the one from Batman and Robin. I don't agree with that bad.
Yeah, no, I don't think that fight. I thought that fight was like the best he's ever shot.
Yeah, that I don't agree with that. I don't think it's that bad, but I do feel like they're not. I don't think it's necessarily the way it's shot as the way it's choreographed. I think the way it's choreographed is the intention is there, but not the full commitment is there, if that makes any sense. It just feels a little bit more like going through the motions. 1, 2, 3, punch. 1, 2, 3, punch, fall down. Like it feels like they're just you can see the choreography and you can see them counting. In a
Well,
way.
yeah, the whole one in the Dark Knight Rises where the dude
Where the guy just falls?
Yeah. Oh no, I hope I don't miss up the take from
He's
Mr.
like,
Nolan. Yeah.
whoa! And it's just like, I saw Batman and I got scared, so I fall down.
Yeah, that was a little crazy. But I definitely like the I think the fight with Batman and Bane is actually prime. Like that's their best fight scene.
Sure.
I think of the whole trilogy. I think it's part the choreography. I think it's part the way it's shot too. I think particularly in the Dark Knight, it's a little crazy how like the whole opening fight some of the fight sequences will be like really far away tracking shots, just kind of sliding through as Batman's like randomly punching people. It didn't come out the best. That one scene where the Joker breaks into the party, and then Batman kind of like fights him there. The camera's all handheld. It doesn't
that
look
one's
good.
a little weird.
Yeah,
I admit that.
Oh, but the dope scenes though, and I think Batman Begins has the best consistency when it comes to the fights. And the scene in particular where Ra's al Ghul and Bruce Wayne are fighting in Wayne Manor as like the place is like on fire.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
I think that's amazing too. But
I think a little bit of the choreography is okay. It's not great, but I think the main thing that Christopher Nolan wanted is to get the dialogue and the message across. I don't think he's, to be honest, Christopher Nolan doesn't seem like the kind of guy to be like, he's not Zack Snyder, I guess you could say, where he's just like, yo, it's gonna be dope, this is gonna be a crazy fight scene, bro. Like, he's not that kind of guy. He's just like, let me get where the lines are and where Bane says his lines, please. Like, he seems like the kind of guy who's like, well, let's get through it, guys. Let's get over with it. I know I gotta put a fight scene in here. Like, he's much more concerned as far as like getting the message across and the lines across.
But there is a lot of good action though.
There is.
Besides the fight scenes, the action is always. Also, I think I didn't mention this when we talked about the Dark Knight, but a lot of people criticized this trilogy for not going heavy enough on the detective stuff. I think the detective stuff is definitely there in the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
And I think what the movie does smartly is it updates the detective aspects, and instead of the traditional noir, like, oh, I gotta take notes and detect stuff. He's using technology to decipher stuff. When he grabs that little piece of the brick wall out and does the bullet analysis, that's modern detective work, modern FBI work.
Sure.
That's kind of more reflective, like today and the future. Whereas I think people want more of the traditional, like, going into creepy alleys at night or whatever.
Yeah. Going undercover and stuff.
Yeah.
Danielle says, what are your thoughts on Nolan originally wanting Leonardo DiCaprio to play the Riddler in Dark Knight Rises? I remember when those rumors were coming out.
Yeah, I remember the Riddler. I heard like Leonardo DiCaprio. I heard Eddie Murphy at one point too. Was like a rumor. I don't know if that was ever true though, man. If it was,
that's such an interesting question. If it was true, I don't think it's true either, because it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense to me. It's almost like you're doing a Joker again, almost. I think it would have came out like that. Yeah. I think you needed somebody who is so radically different from Heath Ledger, like Tom Hardy, in that part. I think what's cool about the trilogy is that all three of the villains are very distinctly different. And I think, they never strayed too close of like having the bad guy and the good guy be the same,
person.
Yeah. It's more of like they represent each facet of what makes Batman. But all three of the films, I remember Nolan kind of talked about like the three central themes of each film. The first one being fear, second one being chaos, the third one being pain. And all three of these villains kind of exemplify that to the most radical extremes, where you're talking about Scarecrow with the fear, the chaos with the Joker, and the pain of the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Bane, I should say.
And we did see the Riddler in Batman vs. Superman, played by Jesse Eisenberg. King Killmonger says, "What? It's true. He was the Riddler. He was the freaking Riddler. That's not Lex, bro. Amen. Not Lex Luthor. Hashtag not my Lex." King Killmonger says, What story would you have told in Dark Knight Rises if Heath was still alive? I would have loved a war for the city between Two-Face gangs, and the Joker would have been epic. Between Two-Face gangs and the Joker. I don't know. I just don't know what would have been with the Joker. What would Chris even have put the Joker in the movies? Would he have ended that facet? Would he have added like maybe a scene of Batman visiting the Joker in Arkham? Would he have added an Arkham scene? I just don't know what would have changed as far as the Joker being in the last movie. I don't know. What
Yeah,
do you
I
think?
don't think. Yeah, I don't see a place. I think it probably would have been to the same extent as we saw Scarecrow and the Dark Knight, and in the Dark Knight Rises, just for one scene. I think that's it would have been maximum.
I kind of agree. I kind of feel like it would have been like a scene in Arkham or something
Yeah.
where we get to see him and be like, oh shit, the Joker's in Arkham kind of thing. Which is why we then find out later that he's not in Blackgate when Blackgate gets blown up. Because remember Blackgate prison gets popped open? And everyone's like, where's the Joker? It's like, well, he's in Arkham. And that's why we never see Arkham. Still would have been cool to see like a Christopher Nolan Arkham Asylum and not a David Ayer Arkham. I know all the shade I'm throwing, bro.
Yeah, David
throwing all
Ayer,
that shade,
man.
bro.
Bright wasn't bad.
Hey, man, Suicide Squad was. It
I agree
was.
with that, man.
Hey, there
I
you
agree
go.
with that.
And that Arkham was. That was not Arkham. Anyways, David Balfour says, "What do you think of some of the questionable casting decisions? Katie Holmes, Eric Roberts, etc." Which one?
This is Eric Roberts.
That's what I'm looking up. What do you think of Katie Holmes, bro?
Oh yeah, that's clearly a mistake.
It's so funny. I rewatched this movie over winter break with my parents. Batman Begins. And they love the Dark Knight Trilogy as much as I do.
Yeah.
And it's so funny seeing my mom and my dad be like, that she's not a good actress. Like in the middle of the movie, my mom is like, she's not good. And then my dad's like, yeah, she's really not that great. Yeah.
She's nominated for a Razzie.
Yeah.
For
Oh, this
Batman
guy's great.
Begins.
What is he talking about?
Which guy? Eric Roberts?
Yeah.
Who's he?
He plays Maroni.
Oh yeah, he's dope, man.
Yeah, he's great.
I thought he was hilarious.
Yeah, I thought he was great. Yeah, Katie Holmes is
400.
okay.
Wait, how many credits does he have? 499.
Yeah, he does a lot of like TV
I
work.
see him everywhere, dog.
He is
I do see him everywhere.
Yeah, he's in like TV and stuff too.
Hey man, I love that whole thing where he's in the club and he's talking to his girls like, we can't even hear each other talk.
Yeah,
What
he's
makes you think I want to talk to you? That's fucking
or like his line of like, from one professional to another, this height wouldn't kill me. He's like, I'm counting on it. And then lets him go. I just want to hear one of those Batman lines as far as like, have you seen the Oral Nuts Dark Knight dubs?
Oh yeah.
Dude, the Dark Knight Rises is my favorite with Bane and Bane rapping.
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
like, oh, you. What does he say? He says like, who is the only man to defeat me in a rap battle? And he's like, and he points the mic to the scientist. He's like, only me. Only you. And then he snaps his neck. He's like, he's so bitter about losing in a rap battle. That's my favorite. But I also love the scene where Batman and Catwoman jump in the Batwing, and after fighting all the guys, and he's like, my mother told me to never get in a car with strange men. And he's like, this isn't a car. And then he flies, and the Mortal Kombat theme starts playing, and he starts flying away. Oh my god, those things kill me, dude. That's my favorite like fake Batman line, is where he's like, this isn't a car.
Now, do you think the Dark Knight Rises? I mean, I mentioned how I thought Batman Begins with the whole like fog popping up out of sewers was a little comic booky. Do you think the Dark Knight Rises was taking it way too far with the comic booky kind of actiony kind of deals? I think it was a little over the top with the bomb and.
No, I don't think so. I think I thought it was fun. I thought it was a cool take on the comic book themes as far as like the villain's evil plan combined with, you know, making it a nullified universe as far as a Batman way. I didn't think that way at all.
But the bomb wasn't a little. I don't know, man.
I think that's real. I mean, why not?
A bomb like that?
No, not a bomb like that. But I'm saying like it's realistic enough to think of bombs as like a serious threat.
Yeah, but I don't know. That bomb was a little. They could have.
It
could have
was.
made the bomb a little.
It was a
little more. You know, make it look like a real bomb. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it did look like some shit like Adam West, like fucking like trying to carry, throw off the beach or whatever. You know,
yeah.
like I don't know that.
But that you could tell that's like a tribute to like Batman kind of comic booky stuff too, though.
Yeah.
Jessica Morgan says, is it just me or did Bane feel underutilized in The Dark Knight Rises? I know we got the pivotal breaking of the bat, but after that, it feels like they could have swapped him out with anyone else and the story would have been much the same. I kind of agree. I hate how Bane went out in that movie. How he's like, you're just going to have to feel the fire. And then he starts trying to kill him, and then Catwoman kills him. And I'm like, well, that was it. Bane was so cool, and then he just died.
Yeah.
I don't know. They built him up so much in the movie that when you find out that he's not the real villain and it's actually Talia al Ghul, you kind of feel like you're like, well, that's okay. That's an okay twist. I didn't feel like it was that cool. The way
I don't think it was an
killed
okay
him.
twist. I don't think that worked at all.
I didn't think it worked that great either.
But hey, again,
it was all right.
Later on in 2049, didn't do it much better.
Hey,
Didn't do it much better.
hey, man. Hey, hey. Anyways, if you haven't read that comic book. It's called Nightfall. It's amazing. It's so good. The actual Bane comic book, as far as like breaking of the bat and all that, and when he gives the mantle to, what is his name, Azrael, something like that, Azrael, to take over the Batman, and then he takes over the Batman, and then when Batman comes back, he has like an extreme version of Batman he has to face off with. It's really good. Like it talks about like extremism and how far Batman's ideology goes and all that. Like the actual comic it's based on.
It's interesting, this movie kind of adapted to some extent the Dark Knight Returns before the Dark Knight Returns official adaptation in Batman versus Superman. In terms of like the older, grislier Batman forced to come out of retirement, or not come out of, I guess in the Dark Knight Returns he doesn't come out of retirement, but it's like the older Batman facing off against like this physically enthralling threat.
Sure.
Overall, and I think that's, it adapts that story more thematically than it does like actual beat by beat.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah. But I think the whole idea of like the older Batman coming back reviving himself and fighting for his place and his symbol in society is really crucial.
Well, that's in the comic book. After Bane breaks him, the other Batman takes over. I think his name is Azrael, but and essentially it's like he beats the shit out of Bane after Batman wasn't able to, and then he takes over and he's like, well, I'm Batman now, and I've taken over because Batman gave me his blessing. But he takes things too far as far as extremism. As far as like you said, kind of Law and Order type shit. And then Batman has to train and basically get back in shape and get back at it to defeat him, and defeat him in a way that it's not even the most physical way. He has to learn how to defeat someone in a purely non-physical sense, or not purely physical sense, which is so interesting. In a very symbolic sense, he defeats him. He defeats him by showing him the error of his ways, is what it is, which is very much like Korra. Again, I'm bringing up Korra and Kuvira at the final book of Korra, book 4, when Korra realizes that I can't just solve all my problems by being physically superior and beating the crap out of everyone. But it's really interesting, and I recommend reading Nightfall. It's a huge comic book, but it's great.
Yeah.
So, anyways, guys, that was our podcast on the Dark Knight Trilogy. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I know we went for a long time, but we really like this trilogy. We want to hear your thoughts. Like RB3 said, come at him. You can add him at
RB3 Schmoes.
And you can at me at Squad Leader Ace, and you can let us know what you thought, what you think of our discussion on the trilogy. What do you think of the true message behind the Dark Knight Trilogy? What is Nolan truly trying to say? Is he really trying to say that maybe poor people should stop and just not be poor anymore? Or just go to Blackgate? Just stay in Blackgate, man. Just stay inside Blackgate.
Lock up all the poor people.
Hey, man.
Let's keep the rich at least rich.
Sometimes you gotta just stay inside Blackgate prison, bro.
Yeah.
Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. For the Meaning of Podcast, I'm Ace.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out, guys.